They chainsawed my front gate like it was scrap metal. No warning, no knock. Just the raw scream of steel outside my window while I stood there in slippers holding yesterday's newspaper, wondering if I was still dreaming. I mean, what kind of world is this where a Saturday morning kicks off with 3 people in matching uniforms, looking like knockoff cops, live streaming as they tear through what we spent months saving for? You ever have that moment where you can't tell if you're crazy or if the whole damn block is? I'd been sitting on the porch, reviewing case files before the next week's court brawl, just soaking in the kind of peace you only get early on weekends. Then the chainsaw started up, 7:30 sharp, and the porch camera caught everything as those HOA authorized patrol guys marched up to my gate. One dude manned the saw, the other 2 had clipboards, and all 3 of them acted like they owned the street. Sparks were flying, metal shaving everywhere, neighbors peeking out, jaws on the floor. And me, I just sat there for a second, frozen. Like, is this even legal? Tyler, their team lead, slick hair, cocky as hell. He kept shouting orders over the saw and making sure his phone got the best angle for his little audience. My neighbor Denise was already at her window, eyes big as dinner plates, while I tried to make sense of what was happening. 3 years ago, we put up that gate, custom forged, for grand, 2 months of approvals, or so we thought. And now here they were, chopping it down for views. I finally got up, coffee mug hit the floor, that's how fast I moved, and demanded to know what the hell they thought they were doing. Tyler paused his stream and started reading off some violation notice, talking about Section 4.22 and some emergency authority clause, Section 12G or whatever, apparently meaning he could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, and all he had was a single sheet of printer paper with today's date and no board signatures. Not even an official letterhead, just immediate removal required, checked off like it was takeout. At this point, I started to argue. Who wouldn't? But before I could get a word in, I saw my grandfather, Walter, step onto the porch. He set his coffee down, took one look at the disaster in the driveway, and without a word, walked back inside. You ever see someone so calm in the middle of chaos it makes you nervous? Denise was still at her window. Other neighbors were coming out. The whole street was waking up to the noise and confusion. A minute later, Walter reemerged, this time with his old 12 gauge across his lap. He sat in his rocking chair, just waiting, not threatening, not moving, not saying a word, just being there, like a statue. And that, my friend, was the end of Tyler's big show. Chainsaw stopped cold. Tyler's live stream caught the exact moment panic set in, as he scrambled to call 911 about an armed homeowner threatening officers. His voice cracked so hard I almost laughed. Cops rolled up quick. 2 squad cars, lights blazing. First officer out. Someone I recognized from the courthouse, thank God. He took one look at Walter and just shook his head, like, of course it's the Harris place. There was no drama, just a quiet chat on the porch between old hands, while Tyler tried to convince the second officer he was the victim of a terrorist incident. Walter was over here talking about the weather, you know what I mean? While Tyler was practically begging for backup. The cops checked Walter's shotgun, unloaded, not pointed at anyone, never moved, and then they turned their attention to Tyler's paperwork. 30 seconds was all it took before the officer asked if proper notice had been given for property destruction. Tyler started rattling off emergency aesthetic violations again, but the officer cut him off, asking for documentation. Why is it always us, right? The whole circus lasted maybe 20 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Tyler's crew left with their tails tucked, leaving our gate twisted in half and metal shavings everywhere. Denise shot me a thumbs up from her window, classic, and Walter just looked satisfied, as if he'd been waiting for this exact scene. Back inside, he cooked eggs and bacon like nothing happened, moving around the kitchen with that military precision he never lost. Then he started talking about maps, survey work, county meetings, zoning approvals from decades ago. It hit me slowly, but what he was saying was wild. Walter helped create our neighborhood. He'd been county planning commissioner in 1984, set up all the boundaries, wrote the rules before the HOA ever existed. Turns out, our lot, and a handful of others, were legally grandfathered in, totally exempt from any of the HOA's post-facto nonsense. Walter had all the paperwork, maps, county correspondence, environmental reports, his own signature on everything. He'd been holding onto a manila folder for years, just in case. News started spreading fast. By Monday, folks from all over the neighborhood were showing up, wanting to know if their property was protected, if the HOA's fines were legit. Walter's kitchen table turned into a community legal clinic overnight. Then the next move came, an invoice in the mail, this time for $12,700. Escalated security response and psychological evaluation fees, even a $4,000 board consultation. It was laughable if it wasn't so outrageous. Walter just smiled and started listing all the ways it violated state law: bad math, illegal billing categories, zero authority. Elaine, the HOA president, was digging herself a grave with every bogus letter. It only got crazier from there. A records clerk from the county called. Apparently, several law firms were now digging into the history of our subdivision, trying to understand who really had the power. Walter was methodically gathering evidence, prepping for a fight Elaine couldn't win. I posted the doorbell footage online, figured it'd get a few views from neighbors, maybe embarrass Tyler a bit. Instead, it blew up. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 views in days. Comments flooded in from all over America. People venting about HOAs, fake fines, property rights abuses. Tyler's own live streams got picked apart by internet sleuths, revealing years of intimidation, fake uniforms, and procedural violations. Major news picked up the story. Legal experts started dissecting Walter's moves on YouTube. His calm standoff became a meme. Walter in his rocker, shotgun in lap, while constitutional rights protected flashed across the screen. The viral energy was electric. People everywhere wanted to know, how do we fight back against this kind of overreach? Meanwhile, Walter kept cool, gathering documents, fielding phone calls, prepping for the next round. Then, on Saturday, exactly a week after the chainsaw incident, he called me into his study. The place was a museum of American bureaucracy: leather, filing cabinets, wall of certificates. There, on his desk, was that manila folder. Inside, the original county development contract, signed by Walter as commissioner and by Elaine, back when she was a lawyer fighting for property rights and grandfathered exemptions. Her own legal work, in her own handwriting, spelling out why our property could never be touched by the HOA. The irony was brutal. Walter explained how Elaine, desperate after her divorce and drowning in debt, had turned from protector to bully, trying to create a gated community by counting our exempt properties in her membership numbers. She'd forged new boundaries, pressured the county, and directed the security company to use intimidation rather than law. All the proof was there: emails, invoices, fake insurance forms, enough for criminal charges, not just civil. The community meeting that followed was legendary. Walter brought a plate of chocolate chip cookies, set them beside his legal evidence, and offered one to every neighbor. Yeah, even to Elaine and the board. You could feel the tension break as people started talking, sharing their own stories. Elaine tried to present her usual slides: property values, safety, community, harmony. But nobody bought it. Not while eating Walter's cookies and reading her own legal arguments from 1984. Tyler, who'd swaggered through our yard with a chainsaw, ended up slinking out the back, facing prosecution for impersonating law enforcement and intimidation. Elaine stood there, speechless, watching her authority dissolve in real time. The viral momentum just kept growing. Law schools added Walter's standoff to their curriculum. News anchors described it as textbook American justice, the Constitution in action. And, yeah, advertisers and legal aid organizations even reached out to support our case. The final showdown was in court, Judge Martinez presiding, a full house, cameras everywhere. Walter took the stand, steady as ever. The judge asked if he ever intended to fire the shotgun. Walter just smiled and said, "Your Honor, that morning I only fired a message with my presence." The place erupted in applause. The verdict? $48,000 in damages, the HOA's fraudulent invoice voided, a public apology ordered, and Elaine barred from ever serving on the board again. Tyler got community service, teaching constitutional rights instead of enforcing fake ones. 3 weeks later, the new gate went up, 4 feet tall, hand-forged, camera installed, plaque underneath. This gate stands for constitutional rights. Established 1984. Defended forever. The old HOA patrol authorized signs got dumped in the trash, replaced by neighborhood kids playing in the open, safe for the first time in years. Walter became a legend, his porch a pilgrimage site for property rights activists, the manila folder a relic of peaceful resistance. Our family learned the most important lesson: justice is patient, stubborn, and built on truth. If you stuck around this long, I want to hear what you would have done. Where do you stand on property rights, on fighting back when authority crosses the line? Leave a comment, share your story. Because sometimes, all it takes is a rocking chair, a quiet plan, and neighbors who refuse to back down. And maybe a batch of cookies, just to sweeten the deal.